A New Frontier is often criticised as the worst season of Telltale's The Walking Dead. But is this because the game itself is inherently bad, or is it simply due to the unexpected departure from what players anticipated for Season 3? I always strive to give games a fair chance, even those that face widespread criticism. So what did I discover? I discovered a great game, but a terrible season. For this video, I'll be calling the chapters episodes. Don't get confused with the actual episodes though. Now, let's begin. The story opens with Javier Garcia, a former baseball player and largely absent son and brother, rushing to his family home after learning his father is dying. With traffic halting his rush, likely caused by the incoming apocalypse, he sprints the rest of the way on foot. When he arrives, he's met by his brother, David Garcia, a military man with a volatile temper. It's too late. Javier's father has already passed. David, resentful of Javier's history of being unreliable, assumes he was too wrapped up in his own insignificant problems to make it in time. Yet, despite David's loyalty, their father's dying request was for Javier.
He's searching the room. ¿Dónde está Javier? ¿Dónde está mi hijo?
The tension between the brothers escalates as grief and anger boil over, culminating in David striking Javier. The fight, however, is soon interrupted by David's son, Gabriel, or Gabe. Moments later, David's temper cools and he reassures Javier of his love while expressing frustration at Javier's lack of responsibility. David's wife, Kate, steps in to comfort Javier in a way that feels unusually intimate. It's during a quiet moment with his mother that Javier gains a painful realization about how his family perceives him. A slap in the face, followed by a forgiving hug. They love him, but it's clear he's let them down more times than they can count. This raw familial moment is interrupted when Mariana, David's daughter, notices something unsettling. The supposedly deceased father is moving again. What follows is one of Telltale's most intense and cinematic introductions. The family, unaware of the danger they're in, is thrown into chaos as their reanimated father attacks. The scuffle leaves the mother bitten, and in the aftermath, David separates from Javier and the rest of the family. Well, this opening is phenomenal. The improved animations and nuanced facial expressions make it one of my favourite Telltale introductions. In under 10 minutes, the game establishes its characters on a deeply personal level, giving us insight into their relationships, flaws, culture, and dynamics. Javier, the self-centered screw-up, is now thrust into a position of responsibility, tasked with caring for David's family, Gabe, Mariana, and Kate. A time skip shows us their new reality. Javier and Kate are tracking a herd, revealing that the family has been living on the road in a cramped van. When they stop at a scrapyard to siphon fuel, we learn more about the group. Gabe is an emotional and angry teen, while Mariana remains light-hearted and innocent. Javier himself is a standout character, quick-witted, charming, and articulate. He's easily the highlight of A New Frontier. For the first time in the series, we play as someone with something to prove, someone motivated not just by survival, but by a need to redeem himself for a lifetime of mistakes. This redemption arc is immediately tested when a group known as the New Frontier ambushes Javier at the scrapyard, claiming ownership of the gas. Javier's protective instincts kick in, but the confrontation forces the family to flee. Javier is took prisoner, and on the road, it leads us to one of the most pivotal moments of the season, the introduction of Clementine. She appears as Javier's savior, cutting down a tree to block the road. While this moment is exciting, it also marks the season's fatal flaw, what I call the Clementine Paradox. I'll delve deeper into this later, but for now, let's continue exploring the story. Javier Lost strikes a plan with Clementine. Clementine agrees to help Javier reunite with his family in exchange for their van, but a herd forces them to detour to Prescott, a makeshift base run by a man named Tripp. Here we meet Eleanor, a doctor, Conrad, a decent man, and a shady arms dealer. The latter sold Clementine faulty bullets, and during a heated confrontation, Clementine accidentally kills him. This is where the Clementine Paradox takes hold. Despite barely knowing Clementine, 94% of players, myself included, choose to cover for her, despite her earlier holding us hostage and Javier not really knowing her. We'll get to this later. Tripp detains Javier and Clementine for the incident, giving them a chance to rest before their journey continues. However, what follows is the worst part of the season: Clementine's flashback sequences. These moments erase the emotional weight of Season 2's choices. Wellington is overrun, Kenny dies in a car crash, and Jane, well, her story ends in tragedy, but I can't say it. Regardless of the choices you made in Season 2, whether you sided with Kenny, Jane, or even chose to go it alone, Season 3 reduces all outcomes to a single narrative. Clementine is now a hardened solo survivor with no memory of your decisions. And the whole story about AJ, well, AJ is gone. This, in my opinion, is why Season 3 is so universally reviled. It fails to connect meaningfully with its predecessors, relegates Clementine to a side character, and effectively ignores the player's previous choices. It feels like, to me, Telltale used Season 3 as a way to reset the series, brushing aside the promises of Season 2 in favour of a more streamlined plot. Either way, upon waking up, Javier and Clementine set out to reunite with his family. Eleanor, or Tripp, helps them return to the scrapyard, but the reunion is short-lived. Mariana is brutally killed by the New Frontier, a cold-blooded murder that shocks both the characters and the audience. Kate is also gravely injured, setting off a desperate fight. Once again, the Clementine Paradox emerges when players must decide whether to prioritize Javier's family or stick with Clementine. Unsurprisingly, 84% chose to remain with her. With episode 1 concluded, it's time to explain my theory of the Clementine Paradox, and then we can move forward with the rest of the episodes. Clementine's inclusion in A New Frontier both defines and undermines Season 3. Paradoxically, her presence ruins the story, yet her absence would ruin it just as much. As players who followed Clementine's journey for years, we're inherently biased towards her. It's why 94% of us chose to cover for her after she accidentally shot someone in Prescott, and why 84% of us decided to stay with her during a shootout instead of prioritizing Javi's family. However, these decisions make no sense within Javier's character arc or the story's narrative framework. Realistically, why would Javier cover for someone who held him hostage just hours prior, helping him only in exchange for the van that's kept his family alive? Why would he then risk everything by engaging in a firefight with an armed group when his brother's wife and son are begging for his help? These choices contradict the introduction's central theme. Javi struggled to step up for his family and prove he's not a screw-up. By the time those decisions are presented, Javier knows Clementine about as well as she once knew Nick. Barely at all. And let's be honest, if it were Nick instead of Clementine, would you have made the same choice? Bear in mind both Nick and Clementine accidentally shoot someone, and the answer is, of course not. But we love Clementine. To us, she's the little girl we protected, shaped and cared for. To Javier, she's just another survivor. Even decisions like the one involving Conrad in episode 2 reflect this paradox. When Conrad discovers Clementine's connection to the New Frontier, he takes Gabe hostage and proposes a trade. Clementine in exchange for the help needed to save Kate, who's gravely injured. Conrad's plan is illogical. It directly benefits the woman Harvey has been traveling with for years. And yet, 89.4% of us chose to shoot Conrad without hesitation, despite the fact that 2 of Harvey's family members were at risk. Again, for a girl he barely even knows. This right here is the Clementine Paradox. Clementine's presence makes the story fundamentally unbelievable for Javier's character. There's no conceivable way that Harvey, whose entire arc revolves around proving his reliability to his family, would risk their lives 3 times in the span of a single day for someone he hasn't got a connection to. And yet, removing Clementine from the game would render it pointless as a Walking Dead installment. Clementine is the heart of the series, the character around whom this universe revolves. Without her, why would players care about A New Frontier? It's a similar issue to Rick's departure from the TV show. His absence makes it harder for viewers to stay emotionally invested. This paradox is precisely why A New Frontier is such a frustrating experience. It's a great game with compelling characters, impressive graphics and sharp writing, but it fails spectacularly as a continuation of the Walking Dead series. As a 3rd season, it's terrible. Now that we've unpacked the Clementine Paradox, let's continue our deep dive into Season 3. I'll point out additional examples of this paradox as we go, alongside exploring my most hated villain in the franchise, one of my favourite moments in the series, and much more. Episodes 2, 3 and 4 excel at delving into different forms of evil and the complexities of relationships. These episodes often go overlooked and underrated for the depth of their storytelling. Let me briefly guide you through each episode before explaining why I still consider the game great, even though I do agree it's still the weakest season overall. Episode 2 begins with a Harvey flashback to when Kate accidentally broke David's army glass. This is one of the first big reveals that Kate was in love with Javier despite being married to David. After the confrontation with A New Frontier, Javier buries Mariana while his family return to Prescott. He eventually follows suit and returns to Prescott with Clem, where he finds Kate being treated by Eleanor. However, it doesn't take long before A New Frontier attacks, raiding Prescott. Here we meet one of the most detestable villains in the series, Badger. Not only is he the one that shot Mariana, but he's also now responsible for the death of Conrad's wife. Badger is compelling because he's unapologetically evil. He lacks philosophy, redemption, or justification. He kills because he can, because he wants to. While nuanced villains are often praised, there's something refreshing about a character who is irredeemably bad. Badger embodies this, and trust me, his comeuppance will be worth it. For now, Javier and the group lose the battle at Prescott, forcing them to flee. Their next objective is to head to Richmond, a decision fraught with obstacles. Along the way, they meet Paul, aka Jesus, who informs them that Richmond has already fallen to A New Frontier. A major issue since Kate and Eleanor were sent there ahead of the group. Jesus helps guide them through the tunnels, during which we learn via flashback that Clementine was once part of A New Frontier. Conrad overhears this revelation and in a tense moment takes Gabe hostage, suggesting they trade Clementine for safety.
The bigger picture, son. Don't you see? We bring her to Richmond, they'll give us whatever we want. Medical help for Kate. She's
Come on, man, be reasonable. This helps both of us.
I'm just gonna go.
This sparks the Clementine Paradox. Most players instinctively side with Clem, leading to Conrad's death in around 96% of playthroughs. Eventually, the group arrives at Richmond's gates, where they are outnumbered and forced to surrender to Max, a man they previously clashed with. The scene is striking because it captures the group's vulnerability. You feel compelled to comply, not out of choice, but necessity. With an injured Kate relying on your actions, surrendering feels like the only realistic option. The statistics back this up. 96% of players chose to capitulate, highlighting how effectively this moment conveys powerlessness and stakes. This realism is one of the game's strengths, presenting decisions that feel naturally superior without forcing your compliance. The episode's climactic twist comes with the shocking reveal that David, Javier's estranged brother, is not only alive, but a council member of a new frontier.
We weren't here to hurt anybody, so I was trying to see if they...
Oh my God.
Dad?
This revelation ignites a host of conflicts. The love triangle between Harvey, Kate, and David, Gabe's struggle between his father and his uncle, and the fallout from Mariana's death, which creates a rift between David and his community. For all the criticism this season receives, moments like this demonstrate its masterful storytelling. Where Season 2 struggled to make its characters feel integral, this twist ties nearly everyone, Javier, Clementine, Kate, and AJ, into the central narrative. Episode 3 begins compellingly, especially with Javier's flashbacks, which provide a glimpse into a simple time in the Walking Dead universe. These moments highlight the sacrifices and hard decisions Harvey and Kate made to keep Gabe and Mariana safe. In Richmond, Harvey is imprisoned, but David takes him to see Kate. On the way, David learns about Mariana's death and immediately demands answers. When Harvey reaches Kate's room, she expresses a desire to leave Richmond, citing her fractured relationship with David. It's clear Kate doesn't love him and wants to be with Harvey instead. However, escaping isn't an immediate option. They need to earn their place in Richmond. It's here we meet the season's primary antagonist, Joan, whose actions will ultimately drive the story forward. However, Harvey is deemed unfit to stay in Richmond, leading to him and his group getting kicked out. Kate and Gabe have to stay at Richmond. Upon being thrown out, Harvey, Tripp, and Jesus follow a map provided by David and encounter Clementine along the way, who reveals a devastating truth. David was the one who took AJ. This revelation complicates David's character. While he helps Kate and provides aid to Harvey, his actions toward Clementine make him deeply divisive. The Clementine Paradox resurfaces here. Players overwhelmingly side with Clem, even though Harvey doesn't know all the details. David is designed as a morally grey character, but his actions toward AJ and Clem push many players to see him as irredeemable. If we're being realistic, Harvey would probably side with David over Clem, but that's a story for another time. Following the map leads the group to a warehouse full of stolen supplies. David soon comes after, and a confrontation with Clementine sets the stage for a choice. Do you side with David or Clem? But before you can have a chance to sit on this choice, you discover the warehouse is full of stolen supplies. And when Max and Badger show up, it's revealed under Joan's orders, Max and Badger have been looting other communities, including Prescott. Badger's unapologetic evil is on full display as he revels in Mariana's death, showing no remorse. This leads to a confrontation, and it's one Badger loses. It's cathartic, a rare moment where a game allows you to exact justice on a truly vile, irredeemable character. Unlike many modern games that humanize villains, Badger's irredeemable nature makes his punishment deeply satisfying. I personally didn't hold back, delivering the brutal justice he deserved.
Oof. No point drawing it out. Get a goddamn hold of yourself.
On the other hand, Max occupies a moral grey area. While he was complicit in the atrocities that led to the death of many innocents and even children, he displays some remorse. Personally though, I didn't forgive him, but his death does show a more subdued manner. Max is killed quickly, a swift execution for his crimes, whereas Badger is brutally punished. These moments highlight the game's exploration of different shades of evil, from Badger's pure malevolence to Max's conflicted morality. If you chose to go down the road I did, Jesus will confront you afterward, warning that acting like a beast risks losing your humanity.
Killed Mariana.
Did that make you feel better?
I wouldn't shed any tears if I were you.
You're damn right it did. Lester deserved everything he got.
Be careful, Javi. Act like a beast. You risk what makes you human.
While this perspective aligns more closely with Season 1's themes, and even something I would agree with in Season 1, I felt that both Badger and Max had crossed lines that warranted their fates. Nevertheless, Jesus' words serve as a powerful reminder of the moral stakes at play, grounding the story in the harsh realities of the Walking Dead universe. Episode 3 concludes with Harvey, David, and the group returning to Richmond to confront Joan about what Max and Badger said. Predictably, this ends in chaos as Joan manipulates others against you, leading to another imprisonment and David being tried for treason as he goes crazy shooting Lonnie, a friend of Max and Badger who lied, accusing David of being the one to give the orders when it was actually Joan. This time you have to escape the prison through a window, in which Gabe assists. You encounter Dr. Lingard on the way, now a broken man, grappling with addiction. Lingard requests that you euthanize him in exchange for the location of AJ. This part of the game, in my opinion, is a haunting and perfect exploration of the psychological toll of the apocalypse. While The Walking Dead has touched on similar themes before, this moment stands out for its raw depiction of despair and exhaustion. In the end, despite his request, I told Lingard to live and stopped Clem from taking the deal. Lingard hadn't done anything wrong. He always tried to remain neutral or even helpful. For this, I don't believe he deserves a death penalty. And as he's incredibly helpful to those around him, there's no reason to take his life. I found it incredibly interesting that the game showed two sides of a Lingard, who is, remember, just a side character. One where he's portrayed as an addicted burden, and one where he's a helpful doctor. It feels like the game was testing our morality. It made me care for a character who barely got 10 minutes of screen time. Whether you love or hate A New Frontier, they really put effort into the side characters, giving them continuing arcs and human struggles. I know I'm skimming over a lot of things fast, but it's because I want you all to have context, to show that while the game is long and a lot of it can be forgettable, when a part is added that's overlooked, it's actually really heartfelt and well written, going from the evil story of Badger to the conflicted actions of Max, and then to the theme of mercy with Dr. Lingard, felt like something intentional. These are side characters, yet they play a bigger part in the game than I first noticed, and I bet a lot of you didn't notice it at first either. After the confrontation with Lingard, a plan by Harvey, David, Clem and Kate to take out Joan gets foiled by Eleanor.
Eleanor.
We did.
She said you were coming here today to take me out.
Joan goes full dictator here, threatening to kill not only David, but also Trip and Ava. The twist here is that Joan makes you think you're picking who to save, but in reality, you're picking who to kill. It's only when Clint steps in that we get a choice to leave peacefully, which I chose to take. Clint seems like a genuine level-headed guy, someone with morals, and David messes it up by killing him, resulting in a huge final fight. When Kate comes to help, she accidentally blasts a hole into Richmond's walls, practically becoming responsible for the deaths of many. As a quick rewind, I honestly think the game should have done more with Clint. I really wish there was an actual way to sway him on your side. In the end, what were episodes 2, 3, and 4 about? Legacy, evil, and mercy. Episode 4 concludes here. The final episode is fully set up, and I'm going to be honest, the final episode is one of my favourites. We have a Kate who wants to right things versus David who caused the scuffle and wants to leave safely with his family, yet the two brothers are finally going to have their relationship tested. Let's finally discuss my favourite episode in the entire game.
Legacy, Javier. It's all anyone leaves behind. That and their bones. Be brothers before it's too late.
Legacy and bones. That's all we'll leave behind. Episode 5 has one of my favourite emotional beginnings of any Walking Dead episode. David, Harvey, and their father are seen playing a game of dominoes before the outbreak. A heartwarming and humanising moment. When Javier ends up losing, he doesn't have any money to pay for his loss, as by this point he was suspended from the baseball league. Their father steps in, offering to pay for Javier. He reluctantly has no choice but to accept, grabbing his father's wallet, only to find a piece of medical paper. Before he has a chance to read it, however, David snatches it. This is the moment where David and Harvey find out their father was diagnosed with cancer. He had refused to tell anyone, resulting in David getting angry. He requests that they don't tell their mother, which David gets even angrier about. When the topic shifts to treatment and when he'll start, he tells the two brothers he turned it down, being too expensive, not wanting to be a burden. David absolutely loses it here, finally pushing his father to fight. At this point, it's Javier's turn to pick a side. Does he side with his father's choice or back his brother David? I personally chose to say it was his life and that only he could decide, to which David storms out. To our surprise, we're told by our father that we should have actually backed David because neither Harvey or David are strong enough to handle their father's death on their own. Their father then speaks one of my favourite quotes of all time.
Legacy, Javier. It's all anyone leaves behind. That and their bones.
He then tells Javier to be brothers with David before it's too late, a final dying wish and a final dying promise.
Last favor for your old man?
Okay, Pa. I'll try.
As hard as you can?
As hard as I can.
What an absolutely phenomenal start to an episode. This whole scene alone tells me so much. Number one, that Telltale didn't need to rely on deaths or zombies to push a narrative or make us feel emotional. They've genuinely got talented writers and voice actors who tried their absolute best to create something great. Number two, that this is one of the only games in the franchise to explore such deep emotions and relationships repeatedly. Legacy, evil, promises, punishment, justice, and giving up. This game is written phenomenally. It's why I think it's great. It's such a shame that it's a bad season. It's such a shame that they forced this beautifully crafted story into a series it just didn't fit into. This honestly could have been one of the greatest flankers or spin-off games from The Walking Dead. I just wish they didn't force it into Clementine's story. Back to reality, the fight at Richmond keeps heating up. When we find out Kate is safe, she goes straight to us instead of David. See, at this point, everybody starts to fear David.
Please, forgive both of us.
David.
Oh my God! Dad!
You're welcome,
No!
David! Gabe! I'm sorry, that was an accident.
You were going to kill her!
Fine then. You people are on your own.
Resulting in a loving moment with our brother, finding out what he's thinking, why he's doing what he is. It's another emotional moment that really stuck with me. With Kate's plan to save Richmond, David leads us to a garage where we can find vehicles to do so. However, when we get there, his plan changes. He no longer wishes to save Richmond. He wants to leave with his family to safety. Kate gets angry about this, slapping David and telling Harvey she can't believe she loved either of them. This is the moment where David finally snaps, believing Harvey is trying to take his family. This leads to another iconic, absolutely beautifully written moment in the game. With David now fully hell-bent on hurting Javier, you have two choices. Finally stand up to your brother, or show him the love you promised your pa. Show him you want to be brothers before it's too late.
What do you have to say for yourself, brother?
David! Stop it!
I love you. No, you don't get to say that. I love you. No, stop saying that.
Dad, no!
Gabe! Oh my God!
You're not taking my family from me.
Gabe, no!
I'm gonna kill you. I love you, brother. No!
Clementine ends this fight before it gets out of control, remembering a familiar fight from her past. With this, David leaves with Gabe. You now have another two options: save Richmond with Kate, or go find David and Gabe. After thinking about it for a while, I decided the correct choice for Javier was to go after Gabe, the boy he promised to protect, and David, the man he promised his father he would be a brother to. It felt like the more natural choice to his character arc. Harvey then finds Gabe and David safe but in danger. Him and Clementine save both of them in one of my favourite action sequences from the franchise. Once they're saved, David gives his final speech, realizing how much he messed up and what he caused. He decides to leave, giving you an option to let him walk or tell him to come back. Again, I was playing the game with Pa's promise in mind, so I asked David to come back. In a full circle moment, Javier quotes his father to David.
Legacy, David. It's all anyone leaves behind. Figure out the kind you want.
Season 3, in a way, is actually about forgiveness. David forgiving Harvey for never being there, but also Harvey forgiving David for his mistakes. Don't forget, Clementine has to forgive David too. The story hinges on forgiving those who've messed up. Javier used to be the mess up. Now David is. Do you forgive him like he forgave you? Sadly, in my game, Kate ended up dying, which I was definitely not happy about, but you can't save everybody. With David back at Richmond, I decided Javier should be the new leader to make sure everything would go smoothly. I told Clementine to go after AJ, and just like that, our story ends. The story of many morals, evils, family, and in the end, love. In my opinion, A New Frontier is a strong entry in the series. It retains the emotional impact of the previous games, and even explores new themes. But it suffers from a key issue. It doesn't justify its place as a Season 3. The Walking Dead games are about Clementine. This season focuses on Javier. I could list all the things I love about A New Frontier, but ultimately it wouldn't really matter, and I can't change change your mind. This is because the main connection to the larger plot in A New Frontier is that David stole AJ, but that's a stretch. If you think about it, it's like making a game about the stranger's brother from season 1 just because the stranger took Clementine. It doesn't add much to the story, and it doesn't really make sense. The game is great, and I personally enjoy many of the characters, but there are noticeable missteps. Characters like Ava, Eleanor, and Conrad felt like they were set up to be more important, but then died off unexpectedly, especially Ava. Clint stands out as a character with the most lost potential. I think it would have been amazing if there had been a way to save him, team up with him, or even have an alternative path where he helps lead a rebellion against Joan. But no, he dies regardless, despite Telltale portraying him as someone who could be swayed to your side. I really enjoyed how Javier's flashbacks gradually added depth to his character, allowing us to see more of his backstory the further he went into the chaos. It's unfortunate though that Clementine's flashbacks mostly serve to invalidate our choices from Season 2, which I spoke about more in depth in my Season 2 essay. It's perplexing that more effort was put into Harvey's flashbacks than to Clementine's. I recently conducted a poll on my community page, which you should check out, asking whether people loved, liked, disliked, or hated A New Frontier. Most responses indicated that people simply just liked the game, with the remaining votes split pretty evenly. Many of the issues I've discussed were echoed in the feedback, and I want to share a few comments that I think perfectly capture the problems with this season. One viewer brought up a point I hadn't considered until now. Many players simply didn't connect with the new characters. Another viewer mentioned the issue with the characters, particularly Eleanor, who they felt had potential but was ultimately underused. I agree with this sentiment. A New Frontier definitely could have done more with its characters. Personally, I think Badger could have been a more prominent antagonist, giving us even more reasons to despise him, and I think he was even better than Joan. I also want to highlight something another viewer said about Season 3 and 4, feeling like they're set in a completely different universe. I wholeheartedly agree. When you remove almost every character and location established in earlier seasons, it's bound to feel disjointed. Season 1 had a unique, summery Georgian atmosphere, with its exploration of neighborhoods, farms, and motels feeling grounded and relatable. In contrast, Season 3 feels much less defined. I'm not even sure where it's supposed to take place. There were a ton of comments on this poll, and I read all of them. Check my community tab frequently, and hey, you might get featured in a video sometime. And all of this, my opinion and the community's opinion put together, is why A New Frontier is a great game, but just a terrible season. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, leaving a like and subscribing would really help. This video took way too long.